Eric this morning was like, did you guys record this week's episode? And I was like, no. And he's like, I feel like you've been recording a lot of episodes. Why is this week's not one of them? And I was like, listen, don't question the process.
He was like, I need to question this process.
In fact, I do question the process.
He was like, in fact, it is kind of my job to question the process. Sometimes it's just the way it goes. We record out of order. And then
it's true.
We're like,
sometimes you have
week.
great people who you're interviewing. And so you do it when they can do it. And then you're like, I don't want to do another one right now. And then Sunday comes and you think, oh, dear.
Yeah, I texted you this morning. I was like, kind of like, we have this plan. Are we doing it today? And I was like, actually, we are doing it today. It's when, because this is for Wednesday.
So hello, everyone from the recent past. Welcome to Fated Mates. I'm Sarah McLean. I read romance novels and I write them.
And I'm Jennifer Prokop, a romance reader and editor. And it's summer.
You are feeling very free.
Oh, listen. So this is like the best thing.
Untethered.
So
ungovernable.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because, of course, I go through this process at like the beginning of every June where I am like, all of a sudden I have 10 weeks off. And there's like a lot of stages to this. And like one of them is like Thursday I didn't go to work and was kind of like, oh, it's so nice not to go to work today. And my husband was like, shut up. You're going to be able to do that every day starting Monday. And I was like, yeah, but today. And then the other thing is that there are like sort of these moments where I realize like I don't have grading to do, right? You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. So even though I have romance
so
things
instead you can read a Susan Elizabeth Phillips book.
I got back in bed and was reading a Susan Elizabeth Phillips book this morning. It was great.
I mean, it always is.
Yes.
Even when it's weird.
Yeah.
It's great.
I'm just doing whatever I want.
Well, that's all very exciting. In my experience, you also go through a period of like, hang on a second, what have we been doing for the last 2 months?
Oh, yeah, sure. That.
And that's actually a very familiar feeling because I go through that also often when I'm like, when I first started writing. So Eric, my relationship with Eric predates my job.
Your writing job, yeah.
My writing job. And what's really interesting, and it also predates like us being married, us having children, us, all of the things.
Having a mortgage.
We did live together before I wrote. And it took us a few books to realize that this was something that happened. But because of my process, which is very slow and lingering and not really doing anything, and then, holy shit, I have a book due, I better write the whole thing in 3 weeks, right? It's not 3 weeks, but it feels intense. That what ended up happening is I would just like go underground, which I continued to do. And then like he would live his life and like go out with his friends and like watch movies and like do whatever it was that he was doing. And then at the end of this process, I would like lift up my head and go like, hey, how was your day? Let's talk. Let's go out. Let's, see people. Let's do things. Let's this, let's that. And he'd be like, okay, but you understand that for the last like 5 months, you've been chained to your desk and like I've had a life without you. And we really have had like over the years, we had to like get used to that, like the sort of ebb and flow of your work, of the work and the process. Now it's a little easier because once you actually like have a child, I can't go underground. Like I have to be present for the family stuff. But I think it's still like, and I don't know if you have this like at the end of the school year where like you don't talk to Mr. Reed's romance until.
I mean, yes and no. I think for me it's more funny because I, being your podcast partner, have seen this process on you.
Well, you're probably noticing it right now because we're in a bunch of group chats together and I'm like not around. And then at some point I'll be like, here's 25 text messages and now I'm gone for 3 days again.
Yeah, no. So I mean, but it's funny because I mean the first year, I think it was probably you were writing Brazen maybe.
Oh, and I was like, I'm quitting.
Yeah, and I was just like, oh God, this is so intense for her. And then the next year I was like, oh no, she's just the way it is. Just how she does things. And you know
every time
self-inflicted.
Yeah. And every time I'm like, I'm never doing this again. This is awful. I hate it. Everything's
going to
terrible.
Be different next time.
And then you're like, you say this every time. I mean, everybody in my life is like, yes, this is part of the process. You say this every time. And I'm like, no, this time it's different.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely more of a procrastinator than my husband, who is far more able, I think, to just, I don't know, like manage his work like an adult, and I don't think it can't be as dramatic. Like my process is what you know, because my job
a daily job.
Right, exactly.
Like
but there are definitely times when I'm like, okay, well, I'm just like getting my grading done at the last minute or whatever. But even then, I have sort of gotten better about it. But I don't know. I think our child is a bit of a procrastinator. And the reason I'm telling you that is because he's moved home from college and I guess we're like, are you going to find a job? It is.
He's like, everything feels fine. I don't know.
Yeah, he's like, well, you people seem
I'm
nice.
not in a rush.
There's food in the fridge. What's the problem here?
I know. Everything's clean.
You're like, there's laundry machines downstairs. What do you want from me, people?
I don't have to put quarters in.
Meanwhile, he's been home for 36 hours. It really is.
But already everybody's like, are you getting a job? What's your deal? Well, I had a fun thing that happened to me last night, and it's actually, you know what? I'm going to save it because I'm going to talk about it when we actually get into the conversation that we have to do. What do we have? Don't forget, everybody, by now you've heard about it, but Fated Mates Live is happening in St. Louis on July 8th. There are still tickets. You can get tickets at fatedmates.net/live. It's going to be super fun. A bunch of listeners are coming. This is always a great time. Kate Claiborne is joining us. We love challenging ourselves to just like say the most not for Kate thing that we can possibly find to say and really set her off. So enjoy that with us. And what else? That is part of my tour for these summer storms, which will be in New York City, St. Louis, Chicago, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Newport, Rhode Island, Cambridge, Massachusetts, Atlanta, Georgia, and Indiana, Franklin, Indiana.
I mean, listen.
With very fun people, lots of friends of the pod are joining. Jen will be there for a couple of them.
Yeah, it's going to be excited. I'm really excited about it.
New Englanders, come see me in Boston with Adriana. That's going to be a fun one. And it'll be with Love Struck Books, which is the new romance bookstore up there in Cambridge.
Fun. You know what? Somebody, who was in that store and just said it's delightful.
I hear that. I haven't been yet. So I'm looking forward to heading up there and being there.
That's going to be a nice time. Yeah, it's funny. Some summers I think we have a lot of plans and then some summers we don't. And this is kind of shaping up to be we don't have a whole lot of planned summer, which is actually kind of nice because it was a hard school year. So yeah, I mean, we don't have any big travel plans. I mean, I think something will pop up and we'll maybe, go visit family or do something, but we, of course, have our WNBA season tickets, but the Sky are terrible this year. And so
why?
I think
did something happen?
Well, I think we hired a bad coach, maybe. I'm not sure.
Oh. It's interesting because I don't think of sports, like you don't think of professional sports as, I mean, I think a lot of people do think like people who know about professional sports. I don't know about professional sports.
Right, you just think like you hired these professionals.
I'm like, how hard could it be to coach a bunch of like highly skilled basketballers?
I think, what I would say is we had
pretty hard
a coach last year who and listen, I don't know either. Like I'm learning, but
that's not your job.
Simply not my business. But I will say I feel like there's a way in which like last year's team felt like they really had some fire in them. And I think some of that is like they want to win for the coach. Like there's a sense of like responsibility to the team. You know what I mean? Like we're winning for each other. And whatever is happening on this team does not have that chemistry yet. And it's hard not to think. So I don't know. It's really interesting. So you know what? Here's the thing, though. I still have a great time. Like we still have a lot of fun. Like I like hanging out with my husband, even if our team's not great. The WNBA is such a small league that every team is actually really good. Like, right? There's amazing players. So I'm always like, there's a fun thing to watch. And it is fine with me.
We showed my daughter A League of Their Own last week.
Nice.
And so if you are out there and you have a like tween, I mean, I think probably if you have a kid who like can hold attention, this is a fine movie for you. And she got so into it and then came home from school yesterday or the other day and was like, Mom, today I did a bunch of research on the Women's Baseball League, and do you know it's starting again next year? And I was like,
That's fun.
So fun.
Well, I think that in a weird, interesting, like, right, like women's softball, I guess, is super awesome and compelling. I think their like, I don't know, like World Series equivalent just happened. So I mean, I think that like
women's soccer, women's basketball, women's
volleyball, everything. I mean, it's just kind of fun to have. And you know what? I think the thing that is really fun, regardless of like the sky, like how well they're doing, is like, you know, when you go to, I don't know, as a kid, I was sort of like the idea that like you could fill stadiums to watch women's sports, right? Like I was really told over and over again by like media or whatever, like no one wants to watch women's sports, blah, blah, blah. And now after like the Olympics and years of like really being like, I was like, oh no, that's crazy. And like actually there's some evidence that one of the things that suppressed like the early support of the WNBA was like men being like, no one wants to watch this. And they were powerful people at like networks or whatever. And so like, you know, it's like, you know what, if you put it on TV, people will watch it. Like if you, right? Like
that is the one thing that I feel like sports people are sports people.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean,
I've been in sports bars.
Yeah. So
it's just like a row of TVs all playing
you know
new
what
stuff.
Is really cool, Sarah, and I'm sure there's got to be one in New York, is there has been a kind of uptick of sports bars that are for like women's sports. And, you know, and it's not like everybody's welcome, but like what they're going to be showing is, and I was like, that's really cool.
In your town, even, and I think this is even for small towns, but one of the things that I'm really trying to like take to heart over the summers, and this is for the last few summers, like during the pandemic, like being able to be outside made me, I think, really appreciate all the like free stuff you can do in your town. And what's interesting is I obviously live in New York City. So like, for example, yesterday we went to ride the New York City Transit once a year, puts the 8 of the old subways back in service from like way out in Brooklyn. They drive that you get on the subway on one stop and it goes like 2 stops and then you get off it and then you ride a different subway back and you just go back and forth until you've done all the trains. It was really fun. You could ride, like we rode the original, the oldest train in the fleet, which is like,
that's so cool, Sarah.
Like 1890. I have pictures. I was real dork about it last night. I like showed some person who's never met me like a bunch of photographs of the subways. It was really delightful. And what I would say separately is I think everybody on here really knows that I love a person who is passionate about something. Like it doesn't matter if I'm not passionate about it. Like I want to hear you talk about the thing you're super into. And you know what people are super into? Trains. Like I got on one train and this old guy was like, let me tell you about this train and the wicker seats. And like,
and you're like, tell me. Yeah.
And I was like, tell me everything. Tell me everything about this train. It was really fun. But it cost $2.50 to do that because you just have to swipe into the subway system. And then you can just ride the trains until they put the trains out of service. And it was really lovely. And, you know, we try to spend a little time in Rhode Island every year in this like I've talked about this on the podcast. It's like the sleepiest town. But like there's free stuff in every town.
Yeah, right. Like Park District or right. Like, you know, yeah.
Yeah. Like the Leslie Nopes of your town, Parks and Rec fans are really working hard to make summer free and fun for you.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
check out your like town hall, Parks Department, find something fun, and then tell us about it.
This week's episode of Fated Mates is brought to you by Megan Quinn, author of Till Summer Do Us Part.
Scotty Price, our heroine, has just started a new job, and unfortunately for her, it's everyone else on her team is a man. And she sort of shows up kind of girding her loins for the idea of it being like a real bachelor pad experience, but quickly discovers that in actual fact, this is not the case. And all of the men on her team are happily married.
Oh, they're all wife guys.
All of them, right? Or husband guys.
They all had their books in previous ones, and now they all work together.
Maybe, right? They all work together. So in an effort to impress her boss, Scotty is like, oh, I'm also married. And some guy, Chad, in her meeting, is like, well, if you're married, why aren't you wearing a wedding ring? And she concocts on the spot a crazy story about how she's not happily married. She's unhappily married. And her boss is like, no problem. I'm going to hook you up with my husband, who is the best marriage counselor in the Northeast. This is chaos. Scotty has realized she has really done a very bad job here of lying. she's broken every rule of lying to your boss. And she has no way out. So she panics. She calls her best friend, who's like, no problem. I'm going to set you up with my brother, who is a millionaire and improv obsessed. So Wilder Wells, name is Destiny, turns up. They go to marriage counseling and then accidentally trip and fall into having to go to an 8-day summer marriage camp with all of Scotty's coworkers and their spouses, which feels just wild.
This isn't a good job. Scotty, you should also go back on the job market. That's my advice.
I mean, everybody's doing the bad job here, but except for Meghan Quinn, who is surely giving us this like chaotic experience where they are simultaneously pretending to be unhappy, but also pretending to be reconciling and surely smashing all over this
the summer camp cabin, for sure.
Because that's what the people want.
Of course. So if you are interested in Till Summer Do Us Part, which sounds like the kind of zany, fun summer read we all want, it is available in print, audio, and with your monthly subscription to Kindle Unlimited. If your podcasting app supports it, you can click on the chapter title right now to be taken to buy the book. Thanks to Meghan Quinn for sponsoring this week's episode. All right. Well, I guess we should talk romance business today, Sarah. And what we are talking about today is second chance romance. Now, we did an episode on second chance romance back in season 3 with Priscilla Oliveris, who at that time had like a second chance romance coming out. And so, this is like sort of a redo. But I think part of the reason we wanted to redo it is because I think you and I both noticed kind of an uptick of second chance books back in, like, being written, coming back online.
They are the fake dating of our time. Like, Pester is the quiche of the 80s. The
fake dating is the, right, like, second chance is the fake dating of 2025. There you go, we got it.
That is 100% it. I started to realize that literally every book that I was seeing come through on, like, for example, next week, I think, that we're doing our summer preview episode. And as I've been looking at 2 weeks, or Jen says it's 2 weeks. So I don't know what next week is. It's a mystery. I'll worry about that. That's a problem for tomorrow for future Sarah.
Future Sarah problem. Yeah.
But one of the things that I think is really interesting is every book I've been looking at recently, it feels, has some element of second chance. And then I sort of thought, hang on a second, is it possible? I have a lot of big thoughts about this because I actually think, and so that's why we're doing this, because I started to get really interested in like what it all means. And I have some like social thoughts and I have some just like general book thoughts. But like, I do think that second chance is one of those things that like it bumps up against a lot of other tropes.
Yeah, I think for sure. I think a big one is like friends to lovers. I think like one night stand. I mean, I think it kind of depends on like what, caused the rift in the past that they have to repair. But yeah, I think so too. I think it's like one of those tropes that, plays well with others.
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure, because like, for example, I've written several books where the conceit is friends to enemies to lovers. Mm-hmm. And so I think that ends up feeling second chancey. I think, like, then of course there's the classic, which was we were together and then we broke up and now we are not. And now we are getting back together, which is the sort of real standard. But then I started to think, like, is it possible that the reason why second chance is becoming so popular is because people aren't thinking about second chance baked into the story of most romances in general. Because I think for somebody who likes a third act breakup, second chance is baked in.
Yeah, right. It's already there.
Because we've seen the first romance, then we see the moment where the relationship is tested and they might pack it in and like part ways. And then we see them choose each other again.
Yeah.
So for me, I think part of what I struggle with in books that refer to themselves as like specifically second chance is how is this going to increase the stakes to the point where the story is that third act breakup moment expanded? Does that make sense?
You know, I've been thinking a lot about how conflict averse romance is right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't want,
which we've talked about
a lot, right? So it's like, especially in contemporary, right? Like we don't want anyone to be too bad or do wrong things, or right, like everybody's like nice, and you know, it's just like at the beginning. You know, one of the things is on the Discord somebody said, and I was like, yeah, this is exactly it. It was like at the beginning of the book they're not together, and at the end of the book they are. You know, like they're and I think one of the things that I believe is that uptick in second chance means that like bad things happen, but in the past. And we don't really have to, you know what I mean? Like you don't have to put it on page. We don't have to like grapple with it really. You know, it was just all back then. And so it's a way of like sort of admitting that there was some sort of conflict in the past, but somehow, right, we're all like sort of past it now. If that's the case, right? Whatever happened in the past that meant it couldn't work out, we have to understand why it's different now. We have to understand what's changed. And I think that is like a real dangerous path, you know, is essentially to say, these bad things happened in the past, but don't worry, it's different now. Well, how? We have developed a really useful phrase around the podcast with our listeners and certainly on the Discord, which is like, not for Sarah, not for Jen, right? Mm-hmm. It's just a way of sort of saying, like, listen, there's nothing wrong with this, right? Some readers will really enjoy it, but for whatever reason, it's not for me. And I think, you know, like, Don't Yuck My Yum has like a similar like vibe. But I think what I really like about like Not for Jen is being able to say, without like sort of fear of offending anybody else, right? Like other readers are saying like they're bad or wrong, like, right? Like you're just like, this is not for me. And I think one of the things I've spent a lot of time thinking about in the past week when I was thinking about second chance is we are very accepting of this, I think, when it comes to like tropes. Second baby, not for Jen, right?
Right.
I think it is a lot harder for people to get behind that when it's about like structural or narrative or writing choices, right? Because I think a lot of the things that are actually like not for Jen and second chance that are kind of happening now, I am just, and I like, I'm going to talk, it's about everybody. I'm sorry. It's about present tense, which I try not to talk about a lot, but one of the things I think that's really tempting in a second chance romance is to do dual timeline.
Yeah.
So what you're going to do is you're going to show me how things went wrong in one timeline in the past. And then you're going to show me things going right in the current timeline. Sometimes it is actually like a back and forth, right? Like I'm jumping back and forth. And so the what went wrong of it all is actually kind of being hidden from me as the reader, right? I don't really quite know what went wrong because I'm gonna discover it through the second timeline. And then because present tense is so popular right now, it is that even the characters don't know what's about to go wrong, right? So you've got two timelines and they're both in present tense, but one is in the past. And
which is a sort of that's difficult for a brain.
But flat out will not read these books. Like, I just won't. That is not for Jen. The whole point for me and listen, someone out here right now is it is for you. I'm not trying to convince anybody, right?
Right.
But I think that the reason I really struggle with this is, to me, the whole point of Second Chance, when it works well, when I've enjoyed it. And you write a lot of it, Sarah, because I also think it's part of some authors' core stories, or it isn't. Like, I think that's my other thing I discovered.
Second Chance.
Yeah. I think there are people who really are interested in sort of like people with a past.
Not dual timeline.
No,
I've only done that once because I'm not an idiot. Once you do it once, you're like, whoa, oh, shit.
Yeah. But I think one of the things I really personally feel like is like, okay, so the whole point about Second Chance is about reflection.
Yeah.
And I'm simply just not interested as a person. It is not for Jen to read dual timeline where everything's in present tense. I want to die.
Okay. But I want to talk about dual timeline in general.
Yeah.
Because I actually think what I don't want people to think is like, oh, well, if I just don't do it in present tense, then it works.
I think dual timeline is like, incredibly
and the reality
difficult to
is
do.
Dual timeline is very, very difficult.
You're already on a tightrope, and now it's in the stratosphere. But like, let's talk about dual timeline because it's rough out there.
Yeah. So I think well, first I want to say I think there are a few ways that people do these books. Like they sort of fall into buckets, which I am not going to sort the ones that I'm going to talk about
We're just going to talk about how they work. Yeah.
But I think like broadly, you could say there is a dual timeline. Okay. And I'm going to talk about Second Chance in general. I think I don't know how many there are. I'm going to do this off the cuff. One is the sort of like top version is these two people have met again. And then we begin the book at the inflection point of the present meeting, the present day meeting. And we learn through the course of the present day story what happened in the past. We usually, and I'm going to say this does not have formal flashbacks. Like this doesn't go past, it doesn't bounce.
No, they just talk about it.
They reveal the story over the course of the book. This is largely, for example, how I write a Second Chance, or like a friends to enemies to lovers, for example, right? Like, I think this is sort of how a lot of writers do this because the work, and I think this is the second piece of the story, which is the work of the evolution of the people and the relationship is happening on page, right? They're basically going to therapy with each other over the course of the story, beginning to end. That does not mean that the characters are the exact same at the beginning of this. In fact, arguably, they both have to be very different on page 1 of the Second Chance romance, and they have to fall in love with each other. They have to forgive past them and fall in love with present them. Yes?
Yes.
This is the model.
I think let me say this was the model, right? Like when we grew up reading Second Chance, and I think for a really long time, that's how Second Chance worked. I think there are now other ways. So
right. So, but when I say like this, yes, you're right.
Right.
I mean, like what I mean is like this is the most
common.
For a long time, this was it.
Yeah.
This is the story.
Right.
And so I think I wish I could think of like a good example of this.
I have one. So like the first Second Chance romance I really ever remember reading was one called Love's Encore by Rachel Ryan, Sandra Brown. Right. And it doesn't matter. I don't have to get into it except that like they had a one night stand essentially, or a brief affair at like a ski resort when they were younger. She left or he couldn't find her or whatever. Then he hires a decorator to like, and it's her. And then they have to figure out, like, you have as a reader have to figure out what went wrong, right? Like, so this is like, I would also say like a very common strategy for sure.
This week's episode of Fated Mates is sponsored by Ava Miles, author of The Hockey Experiment.
So Dr. Valentina Hargrove has a hypothesis, Sarah, and her research question is, are hockey players modern cavemen? They have bad teeth. Hockey sticks are just like clubs. So she is determined to use a local hockey team, the Alexandria Eagles, as a case study to identify like kind of maybe how the strengths in these modern cavemen lead them to win the Stanley Cup. So her sample
Test subject,
thank you, is Brock Thompson. Brock the Rock Thompson, that is. And she is determined to figure out, like, basically, you know, what this guy has going for him. Only it turns out that, I don't know, he chews with his mouth closed and he smells really great. And yes, he has a scary scar, but it is on a beautifully rock hard jaw. So she's really into him, but she cannot date her test subject. And it is going to all turn out very badly when he figures out that she has not told him that her father is the new owner.
Oh, no.
So she is really starting to see that there's more to him than meets the eye. And maybe her hypothesis is not correct. But in the meantime, I think they're going to be having a lot of fun with sticks and clubs in this book. You know what I mean.
Well, if you also would like to have fun with sticks and clubs, you can read The Hockey Experiment right now in print or ebook or with your monthly subscription to Kindle Unlimited. If your podcasting app supports it, you can click on the chapter title right now to be taken to buy the book. Thanks to Ava Miles for sponsoring this week's episode. The prototype of this for me now in like recent books is Kennedy Ryan's Before I Let Go, which is it's like basically it has a prologue that is the past.
Well, that's what I was going to say. To me, that is a different one because model number 2 is the prologue is the past.
Oh, interesting. I was going to talk about prologues. So why don't you talk about prologues?
Well, I think probably they are very similar, right? Like, but essentially, like you get
it gives you a hint.
Yeah, right. Like if there is a brief, and I mean brief, and it is not dual timeline. It is at the beginning of the book only.
Mm-hmm.
Prologue or a couple of chapters even that are them falling in love the first time. And then essentially it's like the book opens the way you described. Right. And so to me, that is honestly kind of different because if there's any time in the past, like we're seated with them in experiencing it at that moment or whatever. And then it's like we get a sense of who they were then unfiltered through the years.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
But I think very similar.
I like a prologue because I do think I don't know, we did a prologue episode and maybe this is part of it too, but I think like there is a difference between obviously, I think the next level then, so that's Before I Let Go, which is a prologue. And then the whole book is 2 years after these characters divorce.
Right.
And I'm going to come back to, I think this is the thing. This episode is going to be about structure and like
how
the books work. So we'll come back to Before I Let Go because I think there's some interesting things happening in this book. But because then there's a second Kennedy Ryan book that I think does something different, which is part 1.
Yes.
And that is the past.
Yeah.
And that is Queen Move, Kennedy's Queen Move, but it's also lots of
books, like, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So then it's like part 1, and part 1 is the past. And then it's part 2, which is, and now inflection point, and we're back to the present. And so it's, I guess, a linear structure. The past is the beginning, the present is the rest of the book.
Yeah, there's just like a time jump and a big one sometimes, right? And sometimes it's a couple of years, right?
Sure, like in Queen Move, it's like 20 years. I don't know if it is entirely 20 years, but it's close.
And then I would say the one I'm seeing more of now is like dual timeline, and it's all in, I'm sorry, these books are almost always in present tense, all of them. All of it. And the only way you know is that the chapters then give you like a timestamp. 1 year,
7 years ago.
7 years ago, now, 6 years, whatever, right? And then so
now you're talking about
them.
It's fed together.
Yeah. I listen, I'm going to tell you, I have seen these books and the minute that is what happens, I stop reading. That is not for Jen. But yeah, and so I don't want to give
really
examples.
So I get I get what you're saying, but like Day of the Duchess is that.
No, I think it's the present tense that breaks it for me. And it is not that I can't read dual timeline.
And Sherry Thomas has one. Which one is that? That's the good one. I mean, all the Sherry Thomases are good, you guys, but I mean,
I am not interested in reading dual timeline where everything's in present tense. And again, I want to say that this is very much not like I'm saying anything's bad or wrong with it. It is just not for Jen. And I think part of the reason why is because, and this is where I'm going to say my problem sometimes with Second Chance, is that I am not reading a romance to watch people break up. And so in a book where it is this, right? Dual timeline and everything's in present tense and it's 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 1 year ago, 2 years ago, whatever, right? Back and forth. And throughout the whole history of their relationship, all in present tense, I don't want that. Where I feel like Day of the Duchess, which I loved and is one of my favorite romances, right? It's really clear at the beginning that there has been a huge, the break happened, right? It opens with him trying to, like, knowing that he's, like, lost her and has been trying to find her. But I don't know, like, Sarah, I'm like, yeah, this thing happened in the past. This bad thing happened. I don't know how to tell you what my brain's doing.
I get it. But I also think there's something else that your brain is doing, which is the past in many books that are structurally like this, right? Where there are two timelines and they are woven together. I think as a writer, when I said, like, I won't ever do it again, like, I don't know, maybe I will do it again, but it is so difficult to know what to leave on the page and what to take away.
Correct.
Because if you give too much air to the past,
I'm watching them break up.
You end up watching them and investing in the breakup instead of the return to each other. And if you give too much air to the present without giving up enough information about the past, then we don't understand, like, whatever went wrong. Right?
Right.
So what I want to say about this is that, so these are all real things. I last night saw the new the Materialists with Pedro Pascal and Chris Evans and Dakota Johnson, and everybody was sort of like, how's it gonna go? Like, it's a love triangle. Like, who's she gonna choose? You know, this is the whole discussion. So what I want to say is, if your podcasting app likely allows for chapters, you should skip, because I'm gonna talk about this movie. Okay. I'm gonna spoil this movie. Although if you've ever watched a rom-com, you know what happens in this. Like, there's nothing. What I will spoil is, I will say it is. I went in thinking, like, maybe they'll twist it all up and, like, give us something different. They do not. It is a straight ahead, like, it ends exactly the way you think it's going to end. And I won't give, like, super details, but so okay, that is your warning. Skip ahead if you don't want to know. Now that they're all gone, let's talk about them. Okay. Dakota Johnson is in a love triangle. She ends up choosing Chris Evans, who is the poor boy from her past.
Sure.
And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because there is this very weird moment in the middle. So, okay. Pedro Pascal plays a billionaire, like, finance guy who is, like, the greatest. Like, he's just terrific the whole way through. Like, I don't understand. He's the greatest. Chris Evans plays, like, the guy Dakota has loved forever. Like, they were together for years. They broke up because he was an out of work, like, actor who had no money. They fought about money all the time. Like, she was like, I just want somebody, like, rich. Like, I don't want to ever have to worry about money. And they broke up, and it was sad because they clearly loved each other, or at least that's what we're told. They clearly loved each other. and they know each other, and he loves her to pieces, et cetera, et cetera. And ultimately, this is a movie that I'm not 100% sure like what we were supposed to take away from it, but like Pedro Pascal proposes and she turns him down and she goes to Chris Evans. And that's the story.
Yeah.
Who has not changed. Like, he continues to live in the same apartment, have roommates. He's 37 years old. He's like picking up catering gigs and like doing terrible acting jobs. Okay. And I have a lot of like romance problems with this movie. However, I want to like really stick with the second chance piece, because we are told at the beginning of this book, and this is a failure of storytelling with second chance. And I see it all the time.
Yes, I want to talk about this. Keep going.
We are told, you don't know what I'm going to say. Maybe you're going to disagree with me.
No, I think I am going to agree with you.
We are told that they loved each other very much in the past, and that they have never forgotten like how they feel about each other. We are shown, Jen, in a sort of like cognitively dissonant moment in the film, one flashback to them fighting about money in like this extreme way, and it being very clear that like these two people's values will never align. Cut to now, some number of years later, like 5 to 7 years later from this breakup, and they meet. Like, again, at a wedding. She's a matchmaker. She's said out loud multiple times, like, the person I marry will be wealthy. That's the only quality I need. And he's like, still poor, still just a guy like a jellyfish in the ocean, right? This is not, you know how I say heroes should be kings? This is not a king. He is not even like a king cater waiter. He is just not a king.
He's the guy.
Right? So we are led to believe there is nothing different about this man. Their values continue to be diametrically opposed. She never wants to fight about money, and these two are going to fight about money forever. Right? So ultimately, we're sort of told like, but they love each other. Although we're never shown like them in love before. And we're not really given any air of them like falling back in love in present tense, right? What is like in the present. Ultimately, what ends up happening is they have the third act breakup in this, or the test, right? That is like sort of 2 seconds long in this movie, is her saying like, I still don't want to be with somebody who is poor. And you are still, this is who you are.
You don't care about
and
this.
And he's like, and then they break up for 6 hours, 10 hours. And then he says, I'm going to get a manager. I'm going to pick up more shifts. I love you.
Great. Yeah.
Now, I'm going to set aside my like, this is a terrible decision, right? Like, as a grown woman, like, you can't, this is not a future, right? But what I'm going to say is, you have not, like, if the ultimate test of a romance novel, if the third act breakup is literally like what we've been saying, which is we must believe that like the characters have evolved to a place where they are choosing to be the person in the future with this person, with their love interest, instead of carrying all the baggage that they like have been dealing with in the past. This movie has fundamentally failed as a romance, right? This story is not a romance. And like, whatever, I'm not sure it was supposed to be. So it's fine. But but I think that this is the problem, fundamental problem with like the structure of a second chance romance being that the person is the same now as they were then, and they're still not evolved.
Listen, this is a very difficult trope to make work. And part of it is because, and this is, I think, where the instinct towards dual timeline, regardless of what tense it is really difficult, is if you show them falling in love in the past, but you don't show me them falling in love with who they are now, the book has failed. Right? Like, the book has failed for me. And I feel like this is what is essentially happening in a lot of these books, with dual timeline is it's sort of like we fell in love in the past and then we broke up for some reason. Maybe it's dumb. We don't know because it's being hidden from me, the reader. So I have to just trust that it was breakup worthy. Unlike, say, in Day of the Duchess, where I know goddamn well why they broke up and I knew it 3 books ago, right? And I knew it was breakup worthy. And you then, it's just like them repairing something over a period of years. This is just, I'm like, why am I reading this? I don't understand. And I think that is part of the, and listen, maybe people are like, you're crazy, but I feel like in a romance, if they fell in love and couldn't make it work, I want to see them as different. I want to see the character arc. I want to see the journey. And I need to see them fall in love with who they are now.
Yes, 1,000%.
That's it. That's the whole ball game for me.
Because Jennifer,
I told you I was going to agree with you.
We are in this with them now, then I need to understand that everybody has changed from then.
Correct.
And now the struggle with this, like, I am always, I think, a little bit more forgiving than you are.
I think that's true.
When about everything, everyone. No, that's actually not true. I'm not more forgiving about a lot of things than Jen, but about writing, I am often more forgiving. And I think part of the reason why is because I understand that sometimes you get yourself as a writer into these like fucking messes. Mm-hmm. And you are so committed to the not, like, you're so clear about where they were, about what happened, that you feel you need to articulate every like tiny fine detail of that in order for you to like move forward in your brain. And the reality is that you absolutely don't. This week's episode of Fated Mates is sponsored by Avon Books, publishers of Holly Michelle's Last Night Was Fun.
So this is You've Got Mail meets Moneyball. So in this, we have Emmy Jameson, who is the only female data analyst at a professional baseball team. And she's constantly being asked to prove herself. And she's just like not going to like date or like share personal news at work. It's just like baseball all the time. Now, she is in competition for the senior analyst position against her arrogant, infuriating, and yes, hot coworker, Gabe Olson. He was a baseball star in college and knows the sport inside out, but guess what? So does Emmy. And so she's just does her job at work. But she has a pending destination for her sister upcoming in Mexico. She needs to find a +1. So how convenient that she has engaging in sort of a flirty texting conversation with someone who is a mystery to her. He just texted one night last night. It was fun. And it turned out he was given a fake phone number after a bad date. And that number happened to be Emmy's. So despite the rules, she's just like, I feel this connection. What could go wrong? It's just a weekend. Oh. Guess what, Sarah?
It's Gabe.
Of course, it's Gabe. Of course, it's Gabe. And so now they have to travel to the wedding together, have to figure out who's like the real person they are to each other. And of course, that rivalry is still hanging over their heads. What is going to happen?
What is going to happen? We're all going to have to find out by reading Last Night Was Fun, which we can do in print, ebook, or audiobook. If your podcasting app supports it, click on the chapter title right now to be taken to buy the book. Thanks to Avon Books and Holly Michelle for sponsoring this week's episode. So when you look at Ravishing the Heiress, which I think is a superior book, right? We did a deep dive on it. We love this book. Like, it's great. That fucking dormouse is going to haunt me until I die. But 1896 and 1888 are our two timelines, and they are woven together. In fact, at the beginning, and I don't know, I didn't reread the book, but at least at the beginning, it like bounces back and forth, like chapter to chapter, right, between the past and the present. And so we are given the kind of Millicent falls in love, like the sort of like unrequitedness of her love. The like hero has this other woman who he's in love with. Like, they are friends, they marry, and now they are back at it for a reason, right? Going back to what you were saying, like the reason is she wants a baby, right? Like, so they're here, like back at it. And so I think obviously this is a thing that like in historical works in a different way because there's like you said, there's stakes, right, on the ground. Although one might argue, you referenced Day of the Duchess, and like the stake there, like the offense itself is very common in present day. He cheated on her, right? So and I want to come back to cheating too, but that's a separate thing. So so when you think about this structure, Sherry had to really, you can't just write 2 romance novels and then put them together.
Correct. Right.
The worst case scenario is you've written 2 romance novels, you take the past and you end it at the third act breakup, and then you weave them together, right? And then then you do it again. You can't do that. What Sherry had to do was actually like balance how much information she was going to give you about the past versus what she was going to like reveal about these characters and their true selves in the present. And on top of it, it has to have a plot.
Correct.
Or else you're reading like 2 characters who have learned nothing about themselves.
Yeah, and I think this is why I like to listen. Dual timeline's just really hard. It's hard regardless.
So difficult to write, you guys.
Right.
It is so difficult.
I think sometimes you're just like, this is too much information. Why is it all here?
Right.
And
I also think Sherry Thomas, let me just also say this if you're out there thinking about this. Sherry Thomas is a professional driver on a closed course.
Correct.
Separating actually literally bouncing back and forth chapter to chapter is a structure that like when I sat down with Day of the Duchess, there was no fucking way I was going to do that. Like it is too difficult to thread that needle. What you need to be able to do, like Day of the Duchess has passed, but they are every 4 or 5 chapters, and only when the present requires
you to get that information
to like sink back into a like deeply emotional beat of the past. That's the other thing. It can't just be, and then we ate ice cream. It has to be, we ate ice cream and everything went to shit that day.
Listen, do I believe that people like drift apart and have a hard time figuring it out? I do. But you know what? In 99.9% of cases, they never drift back together again. And I feel like I have to really deeply understand who they are now that they would even take a chance on getting back with this person who broke their heart, right? They broke on this person.
Yes!
And that I think is... You're starting at such a moment of absolute intensity. And if that doesn't exist, if it's just like, I think there's a lot of really big questions then for me about like, what is going to make somebody take that chance again? Mm-hmm. And it's funny because obviously I'm sure you have a list of books you want to talk about, and, maybe we can talk about, Before I Let Go, which I think probably many people would consider a real example of like, there's a incredible pain in the past of these 2 people.
All right, let's talk about Before I Let Go, because also I think this is a book where, this feels like it's in many ways like the book where Kennedy leveled like up out of romance, like in the world. Like I think suddenly people outside of romance started paying attention to Kennedy with this book.
And listen, I would like you to talk about it because I think it didn't there's a way it didn't work for me. Maybe we can get there. I think it's a beautiful book. I think that it's a great example of a second chance romance, but I have a real hard time with, I'll just say it and then you can talk about it, secret keeping in present tense. The whole entire time they know what went wrong. You as the reader don't find out until the end. And I was like, that just doesn't make sense to me. My brain kind of hurt on that book because of that. But I still think the emotional journey of this book is still very successful.
This is a present tense issue with Jen.
Yeah.
Like if you do not have a present tense issue,
then you won't care. You will be like swept away in the absolute crucible that is this book. Yeah.
Here we are again, right, with this Sherry Thomas, and I would say also Day of the Duchess, right? Like these are 3 books that traffic in emotion dialed up to 11.
11,000.
I say all romance has to dial the emotion up to 11, but like these 3 books do it in a way that like it like where it is all emotion. Like if you're not locked into the emotional pain, and this is, I think, where we're at. It's second chance requires you to mine pain. And here's where the rubber meets the road on my theory of where we are right now. I fear that the reason why second chance is becoming so popular is because readers would rather look to pain and like discomfort that they are familiar with than risk with like some new
interesting
journey,
the devil
of
you know
love.
kind of thing.
And I think this is social. Like, you know how I say it, we say all the time, like romance holds a mirror to society. And so like, I'm going to speak to gender. I'm going to say something gendered and like, obviously take this with all of the caveats of like, not all everything, right? But I think young women would rather read a story about like rekindling something that didn't feel 100% right in the past than risk getting involved with some damaging, dangerous person out there right now who they like are, because it is risky. Dating right now is risky. These are strangers. So like, is it the devil you know better than the devil you don't, right? That is a fundamentally different story than we have to mine the pain that we committed when we hurt each other and find a way to reckon the devastation of our past relationship with the unparalleled love that we have for each other.
And that's why, listen, Before I Let Go is still a book I would recommend to people. Yeah, this one thing didn't work for me, but like that is a book that really unflinchingly looks at the way people who deeply love each other can really hurt each other or not support each other in the way they need, like somehow miss, right? Like somehow not. And I think that's true of like every Sherry Thomas book, and certainly true of Day of the Duchess. But like you write a lot of second chance, Sarah, like Grace and Ewan, when you think about Born, right? Like these are people who
pain. Like they have been put through the ringer.
Yeah. And
I mean, like Grace and Ewan, my God.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And so I think
like,
yeah, right?
But for me, and again, like not for Jen, you know, it's not for Sarah. Like, well, I don't know, it just didn't work the first time.
Correct. That's
like, why
not
am
for
I
me
here
either.
then?
What's the point? Like, right, then why couldn't you figure it out then? Why are you only figuring it out now? That's stupid. Like, I just can't do that. So yeah, I think that's it. It has to really feel real. And I think as I was thinking about the books that I sort of wanted to recommend today, I mean, outside of like Before I Let Go, I think a lot of it is kind of like, well, what made it break in the past? In ways that like I sort of then found myself thinking. And it was like a lot of them were like in historical, it's sometimes about money. In a contemporary, though, it's almost always like keeping secrets or someone meddled. Someone thought they knew better and convinced the person, if you really care about so-and-so, you will leave them. And for whatever reason, because the relationship was not on firm ground, they listened. And so I think but those to me then, like what you're really reconciling with is, are you going to trust me now? Are you going to listen to me?
Yeah.
This week's episode of Fated Mates is brought to you by 1001 Dark Nights, publishers of Dark Clouds and Bright Skies, a grumpy sunshine collection.
Isn't that the greatest way of framing this particular flavor of grumpy sunshine, which is exasperated man who is like dark criminal, never felt a feeling, and the like bright manic pixie like just absolute delight who wrecks his whole identity.
Yes. And he's like, I hate it. I like to be grumpy. And look, he's still going to be grumpy at the end. But...
He is, but not around her. Never around her. I'll bet you in every one of these short stories in this collection from 1001 Dark Nights. And we've talked about these before. Each one is bundled up. It's 4 books bundled up and they're all this one particular flavor of trope. And in this case, listen, the reality is that these women know how to write. There's no question. You're going to get books from Joanna Wild, Kristen Proby, Larissa Ione, and Laura Kay in here.
What more could you want? I can't even think of it.
At least, like, people we have talked about multiple times on the podcast. I've already pre-ordered this anthology.
Me too.
And here's what it's going to be. It's going to be like a man who hates absolutely everything and has never felt a feeling, and the women who just wreck him. And I don't know what more you could ask for in 2025 than this.
No, I don't either.
So that's what I have to say about that.
All right. So everybody, if you are also interested in having the delightful experience of a bright sky winning over a dark cloud and making for a beautiful romance, then check out this collection from 1001 Dark Nights. It's available in print or in ebook. And if your podcasting app supports it, you can click on the chapter title right now to be taken to buy the book. Thanks to 1001 Dark Nights for sponsoring this week's episode.
I want to say something about misunderstanding, miscommunication in here too, because I think that this is another thing that, like, God, we're all listening to the internet too much. But like readers, we've talked about this before too, but like readers like to get on the internet and they like to say, like, I hate misunderstandings.
Why don't they just have one conversation?
Why don't they just talk it out?
Do you not have human relationships?
First of all, like, have you ever been in a relationship before, right?
Not even a relationship, any relationship.
That's what I mean. Any relationship. It is very difficult. Okay. Personal story from my life. My middle school student, Jen knows this, had like a middle school moment with her friends this week at school. It is deeply irrelevant what this was about, because let me tell you, when I finally figured it out, I was like, why?
Right.
Why are we doing this? But one of the things, like, it was like rumors, gossip. I said people said I said this and I never did, blah, blah, blah. And I said to her, I was like, listen, kid, like, the way you solve this problem is by turning the lights on, right? Like you just like don't give air to the problem and like turn on the lights and tell the truth and just like hope that like ultimately that's
enough.
People will hear it. Right. Do you realize like how many thousands of dollars and years in therapy it took me to get to turn on the lights, right? Like, I do not expect my 11-year-old to be able to fundamentally do this right now, but like, I'm going to keep saying it to her because maybe I can save her some money. But the point is, like, it is very difficult to turn the lights on in a relationship. And so, like, I think the other piece of this is instead of us saying, like, I think a lot of these writers are thinking, well, I can't have it be a misunderstanding, even though that is the most authentic problem in so many of these situations, right? Like, Before I Let Go it begins 2 years after a divorce that is related to like fertility issues, right? And like, they just can't talk. They're both in so much pain that they were unable to like climb out of the muck and mire when they were married. It ended their relationship and now they have to fucking figure it out. Right. And Kennedy, when you ever hear her talk about this book, she talks so much about like the importance of mental health, especially for men, especially for Black men, right? Like the layers of like emotional work that Kennedy puts into this book to make it believable that
they are somewhere different now.
Who love each other beyond measure could have simply just not talked it out and ruined everything.
Well, and I think it's because the thing about Turn on the Light is like this type of miscommunication is not based in secrets or lying. It's the type of miscommunications that's like deeply rooted in like, here's how I operate in the world.
Yep. Worth.
Yes.
Like your value.
Right.
Your fundamental core beliefs in yourself. And like obviously, weirdly enough, like Day of the Duchess is also about fertility. Right. And that is what that is what fundamentally like sort of, it's separated them on multiple levels, right? Like there are a couple of reasons why they've been and fertility is one of them. And I remember that moment writing it's in the past, the scene where Sarah loses a child and is basically approached and told, like, it's old, right? It's historical. So doctors are just like, well, looks like you won't be able to do that again, right? Which in history was a thing. And Mal's mother goes to her and says, well, you have no worth anymore. How much will it cost to get you to leave? And like, she's like, well, I guess he doesn't care. And she takes the money and runs. And like, these perceptions of like who we are, what our value is, like how we are, what our value is to the other person that we're with, like these are pain points, all of them. And if you're not willing to mine that pain as a writer, like if you're not comfortable doing that, second chance is going to be a struggle for you. But the other thing that I said about like, maybe these more modern second chances are actually negotiating something very different than pain. Maybe they're negotiating like, well, it's still pain, but it's avoiding pain.
Yeah, I it's interesting because I do have a couple that are pretty recent that I can recommend. I'm really fascinated though, because I fear that if it is in fact this year's fake dating, that it is going to be kind of a bust because, right? Like fake dating is a trope that like creates conflict out of nothing, right? Like there's really no reason we can't be together, but, for whatever reason, you know what I mean? Like fake dating is just like, we're going to make conflict maybe where none really exists. Or the conflict is like, we are lying to people. And very few romances actually like put the pain of that, the discovery on page. Because if you're just lying to your coworkers, I hate to tell it to you, but your coworkers don't really care who you're dating or not. They don't. And so, this is a way of creating like sort of the appearance of a conflict. But that's it. I'm like, if you were together in the past and you broke up and something kept you from being together, right? Like, what is that thing and how are you going to fix it? And one of the things I just think is like, so here's an example of a fake dating book that actually is coming out this week that I think is successful because it's If I Told You I'd Have to Kiss You by Mae Marvel. And the Yardley is a CIA agent and her girlfriend, Casey, they've just broken up. I mean, like literally, like I think she's still like moving the stuff out. And for Yardley, she was like, I cannot tell her I'm a CIA agent. It's a secret. I literally cannot tell her. And what she discovers is that Casey is also working for the CIA. They have worked together, not knowing, because, like it was Casey's just like a programmer or hacker and like, like kind of behind the computer. And once they realize the truth, they have to kind of figure out how to work past that. But like they both kind of get that, like, well, we are both CIA agents, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like we are both keeping a secret we had to keep for work. And in fact, a lot of the angst is about the fact that their bosses, the people that were sending them out on these missions, did of course know that they were together and didn't tell them. Right. So it's like all of the displacement from and it's a great book, but it's not a great second chance romance. In fact, it's kind of just a nod to second chance. They have barely broken up. Yardley's stuff is still in the house, right? And so I think that that's the other thing is we're going to see maybe second chance where it's kind of a nod to second chance, but not the kind of second chance where whatever terrible thing that broke them up I don't know if that makes sense. So I think it would work for people who are maybe looking for like I think what we're going to see is like lower stakes second chance. And I
think that's what we are seeing. Like people who, just weren't, they broke up because of whatever in high school. I think there's a lot of high school.
Yes.
Like we were together in high school and now we're like back. And listen, I'll be honest. Those were some of my very favorite books when I was coming through romance in the early days. Like you were supposed to take me to prom. You never showed up. My favorite conflict. Right. And then it was like, well, I didn't show up because my father like kicked me out of the house or whatever. Right.
Well, and those are actually, I still enjoy some of those. I think it depends on the distance in time. And I think it has to be really clear to me that both of those people can look back on whatever happened and realize, like, we're different people now. Like, that was youth. We were really at the mercy of other people. We're different now. And, like, kind of almost very quickly, like, they managed to, like, kind of talk about what happened and move on.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because
that's
if you're
queen
30,
move,
if you're
right?
30 and you're still upset about you like being not your prom date not showing up, like, what have you been doing with yourself for 12 years?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
I need you to be like an adult now.
Yeah.
But like, so queen move is different because it's
queen move is structurally different because the first sort of third of that book is them as children, like literal children. And they were like, what she's teeing up there is something very, so this is also Kennedy. Obviously, we're talking core story here. Like, I think Kennedy, there's no question that this is part of Kennedy's core story. But interestingly, in Queen Move, like the structure there is the first third of the book is when they were children. And what she's teeing up there is that they are fated mates. Like, she's playing with the concept of like, what if they were fated mates all along, right? Then their parents move away from each other for a reason. Like, there's one's father has an affair with the other one's mother, like, and so they separate. They are ripped apart, and they don't really know whatever happened. Like, they're just distanced, and then come back together in their 30s, and he's like, when they first meet, the implication is that he is still married, and like he's whatever, he's in the process of divorcing, like it's whatever it is, but and then they fall in love with each other, older, wiser,
different,
right? Like, grown up.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's interesting. Falling in love with each other grown up is critical to kind of all of these books, no matter when the first chance was. So I just want to talk about, like, while I'm just being chaotic, I want to talk about structure too, because some of these books are really interesting in the way that they're like playing with structure, not with like flashbacks or like timeline or whatever, but like, for example, Tara DeWitt's Left of Forever, which came out earlier this year, came out in May, is interestingly, it's a divorced couple. They were children. They were in high school. She got pregnant. They had a child. Like, they got married too young. Like, this feels like a very real story, right? It's very authentic. They live in the same town. They got divorced because it just was so all the burdens of everything around their like early, raising a child young, being married young. There is content warning for fertility issues in this book too, like that kind of all come to a head. They get a divorce, but they live in the same town and they are co-parenting. And it is very clear at the beginning of this book that they like really love each other. They just couldn't make it work. And Tara clearly really loves romance novels, like the old school romance, because she is not afraid to like also mine this like deep well of pain that exists when like you are literal feet from the person who you have loved your whole life. And, like there's this great quote and it's like, I grew up with my like first and forever love. Right. And so I don't know how to live without him. Right. Like, I'm really paraphrasing. She wrote it better, but like there's this moment. So, imagine like being so in love with somebody and knowing that you've been through it once and it failed, and like really having to come to learn and trust that you can do it again and maybe it won't fail. It is first person, so it's probably not for Jen, but part of what I think is interesting in this book is like she's using letters, she's using emails, like again, kind of structurally it's interesting to me because
how do you put the past on page, right?
Yeah, it's sort of this question of, and like obviously I love an epistolary romance. You mentioned A Rogue by Any Other Name, like the past in A Rogue by Any Other Name is only through letters.
Only through letters, right?
Right. So I think there are interesting ways that you can think about format and like actually make a book that works. But I did find that this book was like, again, I think like very emotional. Like she was really mining a very particular kind of believable emotion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is, I think for me, for sure, like a really key part. I would like to talk about a historical called Designing His Duchess by Gabrielle Carr. And this is almost a novella.
I don't know that name.
Yeah, this is really interesting. It's part of
Gabrielle Carr.
It's part of a series, like one of those Kindle Unlimited series called Regency in Color, where it's like 7 or 8 books, and all of the books contain characters who are people of color in some kind of way or another. And in this one, Juliana, and these are at least this one was pretty short, like novella length, maybe 120 pages. And it's, listen, this is, I think, like it's a very classic kind of story. There's not a lot of surprises, but I thought it was done really well. And so it opens with Juliana, who has been essentially told by her aunt and uncle that it is time for her to get herself married off on the marriage mart. And she is really hesitant to do this. She has internalized some messaging about her mother, her parents. So her uncle is like the Earl or something, and her father was the younger brother. He was traveling, met a free woman from Jamaica. They were wildly in love. They married. They came back to England, and she like grew up in this household full of love. And she was never made to feel like, bad, different, wrong. But once her parents died and she went to live with her aunt and uncle, that sort of changed. And she's also hard of hearing. And she is just like, I don't want to get married. Just like, let me go to France and paint, and like, just, it will cost you nothing. Like, right. Kind of like just, and actually I'm such a good painter. This is one place she is she's very proud and knows her work is good. She's like, I could actually maybe like make my own money painting if you would just kind of let me. And it's actually a really painful scene, and I actually love this, which is she's kind of like, but her aunt's like, no, you got to get married. Like, this is how it goes. So we're gonna take you out to the ball. And then a girl comes over and seems to be like kind of maybe interested in befriending her. And they like walk across the room, and they're like walking towards Colin, who's the Duke. And this is like, of course, this man she's been in love with. And it turns out this girl is just like basically like, she's ugly and can't hear, and it's going to make me look better, like looking to humiliate her. It's like really almost unreal. And Colin is kind of like a drunken wastrel, and we've seen him like drinking and gambling. He was the younger son. His father and his older brother have died, and so now he has inherited the dukedom. And what we find out is like, she was like, we were going to run away to Gretna Green together. We were childhood friends, and you never showed up. Right. And you're like, what happened? Well, and of course, Sarah, what happened? Right. His father was like, you pick her or your inheritance.
Yeah. Exactly.
Of course. Right. Of course.
I love a terrible dad.
Exactly. And you know what? I think it's, and so then, of course, Colin's such a dummy. He's like, well, she will never love me again because I ruined my chances, but I could help her find somebody who will love her.
Yep.
And I was like,
perfect.
All in. And
I'm going to get her married as penance.
Right. Exactly. And what's great is he has a friend who's basically like, you're an idiot. Right. And so it has all of, and listen, it, like I said, there's nothing surprising in this book, but it was just a really perfect 120 pages of like really tight, like, I fucked you over in the past. I want to try and fix things, but I think you're perfect and wonderful and beautiful. How dare the world not know that about you? And bam, it was great. So that was Designing His Duchess by Gabrielle Carr.
I want to talk about Alexis Daria's A Lot Like Adios too, just sort of briefly, because that's probably a softer, like a, it's like if you're looking for like a softer second chance. Gabe, these are high school students like they grew up next door to each other. We've talked about this before, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but there are two things I want to sort of hit on. One is, the betrayal in the past here is that he had this like sort of plan. They were best friends and they were planning to like be together, like be best friends, and they also like secretly loved each other, and they were writing fanfic together, and like it's really like a nerdy,
it's
like
really
it's
sweet.
a real joyful nerdy like story. And he decides he's going to go to LA for like post graduation and like try to like make a go of it there, but he doesn't tell her because he doesn't want her to know. Like he feels guilty, and it does feel very like real, like in a sense of like, this is what a 17-year-old boy would do, right? And then he leaves, and she feels totally betrayed, and he sort of like cuts her out because he doesn't know how to like be a normal person yet, right? He starts a like chain of gyms, like for romance reasons. He's back in New York, and because he and his partner have decided they're gonna start a new gym in New York. And he goes to stay at his family's, like his parents' house. And she is, for romance reasons, staying in her parents' house. So they are like neighbors once again. They like kind of work through it real fast. And then they like immediately start having like terrific sex. And so this is a sort of lower stakes second chance romance. But what I do want to say is this is a good example of like the flashbacks in here structurally are fanfic.
Yes.
Like they're like back and forth text messages and the fic itself. And Alexis sort of uses this in other books of hers as well, kind of using these like found objects or like other texts. But this is a very fun way of like unpacking what happened in the past, unpacking why they were so perfect for each other in the past, and reminding us that like, and them, that there has always been a spark there. And so it makes sense that there would be a spark there again.
Let me just talk about two more, and then we can wrap up, since I know we mostly talked about structure today, not about books, but I think these are ones that are successful in different ways. Okay. I want to talk about Broken by the Horde King by Zoe Draven. And what this one has is, and I think often this is one that's sort of successful to me, is like they were really young, right? They were friends. She had a big, huge crush on him. And, the way it works in like the Horde King or whatever, right? Like their little village is that you can essentially like show your intent by like placing, like a goblet in front of the person you like. And if they drink out of it, right? Like then.
Oh no.
And I know.
Oh no.
And she does, and he ignores it. And she is terrible. Like, and it's like humiliating.
Straight
right?
to jail.
She humiliated herself in front of like her adoptive parents because she's human and all the rest of them have tails and stuff, whatever. And look at this, just me reading these books, right?
All the rest of them have tails and stuff.
Sure. Okay. So what happens then is he actually like runs out after her, and she kind of offers herself to him again. And he is just like, no. And then he goes off and he becomes Horde King. And now the part that's really interesting is this is humiliating and terrible, but it's actually not the thing she can't forgive him for. And I think this is where the book does something really smart, which is then it picks up 9 years later. So this is one of those books where I think it's like the first 3 chapters are the past. It's not dual timeline. It's just this happened and now it's 9 years later. And he has gone off, and like basically if you rise up to a certain rank, you go off and find your own horde, which is like a traveling group of people. And he has done this. And the thing though that she cannot forgive is that when her mother died, she sent him a letter that was like, my mother died and you are my friend and I need you to come back and be here for me. And he doesn't reply. And then she actually goes to his mother and says, can you send him this letter? And her mother agrees, and he never comes back. And this to her is the thing that's unforgivable. And so when he returned 9 years later, she's now a healer. He needs one for his horde. How convenient. He's like, I want it to be you. And kind of for reasons, she'll never get the promotion inside her village, the one they grew up in. So she agrees to go with him. But just like, she's kind of like, just for a little bit of time. And he really is like, I know I hurt your feelings, but we were young. Like, why is she so fucking furious at me?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this is largely an effective way of sort of deepening a child, like like you broke my heart when I was kind of a dumb teenager. And it takes a while for him to even realize her mother is dead. Right. And he's basically like, why didn't you tell me? And that's when they realize that essentially, and then it's kind of like, now he has to, well, why didn't my mother tell me? Right. What was going on and kind of why, and like I said, I think it's really effective because the mining of the hurt isn't the hurt that you think it is.
Yep.
So that's Kieran and Maeva in Broken by the Horde King, and it was great.
That made me think about Kylie Scott's It Seemed Like a Good Idea at the Time. Because again, this sort of youthful stupidity is a real fun. I mean, it's fun.
Yes.
Also, everyone knows I love an unrequited love story. And I think unrequited love is really hard to pull off, too. I think there are a handful of writers who I think do it perfectly, and I think Kylie is one of them. The structure of this book is the main character, Adele, her parents are divorced. She only spends summers with her father. And he's like in construction, and he has this second in command named Pete, who's like, and Adele doesn't have any friends in town, and she's an awkward teenager. And like, whenever she comes into town when she's a teenager, like, he's just her bud. Like, he's like nice to her, and he's just like a nice guy. He's in his 20s and he's just nice. And she falls hard for him, but like the feeling is not reciprocated. And when she turns 18, there's a party and he comes to her birthday party because he's a nice guy. And she kisses him and he's like, oh, no, ma'am. And she is so embarrassed, just like devastated with embarrassment, that she takes off. She doesn't come back for like, I don't know, 8 years.
Well, she drilled a hole in the ground with her body, so it takes a long time to crawl back out of there.
I mean, and the thing is Kylie's so good, and that like, I mean, you read it and you're like, oh my, like just devastated with embarrassment. And then she comes back because her father's getting married again, and Pete is like, there's no room for her to stay at her dad's house in this small town. And he's like, well, you could stay at my house. And she's like, I would rather die.
Let me go back in my hole.
Exactly. But in fact, I don't know what happens, but for some reason she ends up staying in his house. And then they they work it out. It's great. But that level of like, I think it really takes a particular kind of writer to be able to just like really deeply pinpoint the particular embarrassment of being an idiot child.
Yeah. I have one more, and I think I saved it for last because to me it is the one that like takes a really incredible swing. And I was like, honestly, kind of shocked that it happened, and it really worked for me, but I'm gonna warn people it might not work for them. So the book is called Make Me Hate You by Candy Steiner. And I've never read a book by this author before, but now I'm really interested in reading more. We have mentioned Candy Steiner when Jessica Luther was on the sports episode. She mentioned a book by Candy Steiner. And I remember being like, oh, that sounds interesting. But now I'm like, oh, this is interesting. So in this book, we have Tyler and Jasmine. And this is a book that starts out with like, here we are, right? Like the one we described, like sort of the classic. And it turns out that, although now that I say it, like sometimes I say this with such authority and then I'm like, wait, is that in fact true? Okay. So what happens is, Tyler and Jasmine were kind of besties along with Tyler's sister, Morgan. Back all the way through high school, all the way through kind of their I think maybe it was through high school. And Oh no, I think it starts with a prologue. All right. So yeah, there's a prologue
Okay.
and it's they're like right around high school graduation. Jasmine's boyfriend has just broken up with her, but even worse is her mom has taken off, and her mom has been essentially her aunt has been raising her because her mom is just not a good person, has done some bad things, and now has just basically been like, you're on your own now, bye. And it has just broken Jasmine's heart.
Mm-hmm.
So she goes to find Morgan and Tyler. Morgan's not there. She finds Tyler. They have sex. She has had this crush on him. She's like, everything's going to change now. And then the next morning, or he's gone, and a couple days later, he's like, it's a mistake. And her humiliation and her anger and her hurt is so huge that she basically like takes off, moves to California, goes to college there, and never comes home again.
Yeah.
Right. And it takes her a long time. And then like the book picks up. Now it's however many years later, 10 years later or something. Morgan's getting married, and there's no way that Jasmine cannot show up for this.
Yep.
And Tyler is acting a little like the hurt party.
Uh-huh.
And she's like,
sure,
what the hell is going on here? And it takes a while for her to like sort of get to the bottom of this, right? And and I'm going to spoil this book a little because I have to in order to talk about what I thought was the big swing. It honestly felt pretty standard, right? Like you're kind of like, well, what was it? It's all her point of view.
Sure.
Turns out that Morgan meddled. And the next morning was like, you took advantage of her. Her mom just left and was so heartbroken. How dare you? What kind of person would do that? And sort of talks him into the idea that he was in the wrong. And so he's a little bit like, I can't believe you left and we weren't friends anymore after I did everything to preserve our friendship after I took the blame, right? And she's like, you idiot. Now here's the part, Sarah, where I truly was shocked. I'm not going to lie to you. They both have other people in their lives.
Yeah.
And they cheat. They get together and they sleep with each other before either of them, well, certainly before she breaks up with her boyfriend. And I was like, God damn. And I think part of the reason was because it really felt like a believable, like I had bottled all of my feelings up. And then when I realized, and it was really interesting, like Jasmine, when she kind of realizes what happened, is like, am I a monster? Because I didn't believe him. He was my best friend. Why was I so like, right? Like she sort of has to interrogate, why didn't I try harder? And it was really interesting. So anyway, all these bottled up feelings essentially come really like it's just 10 years
barreling into view.
Yes, and into bed. And it felt believable to me. And I think part of the reason it then worked is she is then honest with the boyfriend about what happened. And it's painful. And it is painful to read her essentially kind of telling him what happened.
Confess.
Yeah, confess. And to have this man who you don't really know, but he's a good guy. It's not like he deserved this. It's not like some...
Exactly.
And I feel like sometimes authors take the easy way out.
And they're like, he was terrible. So he deserved
so it didn't matter. No, that is not what happens here. Ooh, he is great. And she broke his heart. But she finally is admitting the truth about how she really feels about Tyler. And I honestly was pretty impressed by I don't know, it had a premise and it didn't pull its punches at all. Yeah. And so I was like, wow, I will read more from this author. That was Make Me Hate You by Candy Steiner.
Nice.
So yeah, I did find some good ones.
Listen, there are a lot of good second chance romances out there. We didn't even scratch the surface of historicals.
No, I know.
I often think that it would be fun after we do an episode like this to like do the continuum. Like maybe we should add this to our to the Fated Mates collections department. Like after every episode we do like, here's the continuum of like the fucking craziest second chance to the like softest that we love, you know? Because obviously there's also Mr. Vivisection in here. The second chance just
You're like, how?
Unbelievable. Listen, somebody was talking about that book on Instagram the other day, and I sent you the screenshot. So this is, everybody, this is a book from IAD. What is it? Demon from the Dark? No, that's the one that you liked. Dark.
I can picture the cover.
Desired.
No. Wait, stop talking. Stop making words, Sarah. Let me think about it. Dreams of a Dark Warrior?
Yes, I knew it was a D. Dreams of a Dark Warrior, where the hero is a berserker and like they're so fated that they just like find each other in every lifetime
after lifetime.
And
that's hot.
Woof. It begins a little bit, and then the rest of it is just like wild. And also he vivisects her over the course of this series, and it's a ride, everyone. I wouldn't start with this book.
No.
But it is an interesting, like, if you read the whole series in order. But yesterday or this week, somebody was talking about it online, and they wrote Mr. Vivisection, more like Mr. Vivisection.
You were so mad. You're like, I can't believe we didn't think of that.
How did we not come up with this?
Wild.
So credit where credit is due. Well done, everyone.
Yeah. Well, and I think, like, in some ways, I will say, I would rather it be real fucking over the top dramatic, right? Then
make it terrible.
Then like it.
I mean, I think the problem is this also runs, and then we have to go. This is like the longest episode, but this also runs up against this view of romance at this point, where like, well, if he does something real bad, like if it's really bad, then she shouldn't forgive him.
Yeah. But then I'm like
she should go off. And it's like, well, yeah, but also this is romance novels. Yeah. So like, yeah, he vivisected her, but she's fine now.
Well, I think it's also, I will say this is one of those ones where you're like, well, I would never forgive that. Well, you are not the character, right?
Well, there is that.
you know?
And I just think also like we have to be willing to acknowledge that like these books are not like they're not like relationship guides.
No.
Please don't ever read a MacLean novel and go,
yeah, this is
the ideal.
Let me get on this plan.
You want a relationship that would be the most boring book you could ever find.
You know what?
That is my hope for you.
It's a nice time, everybody.
Anyway. I'm Sarah MacLean. I'm here with my friend Jen Prokop. We are Fated Mates. You can listen to us every Wednesday wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us online at fatedmates.net, where you can find all of the books we talk about in every episode by clicking on show notes at fatedmates.net. While you're there, click on the collections department and go and find a bunch of very fun recommended read lists from real people, no algorithms involved, about books that where people have collected, just like books about mustaches. Tara DeWitt is on there, for example, or like books about vivisection. I don't think there is one because
there's one.
How many could there possibly be?
I don't want to actually know the answer to that, everyone.
So yeah, don't tell us.
Vivisection.
Anyway, so you can find all that information there. You can also follow us online at Blue Sky, Threads, and Instagram. And don't forget to come join us in St. Louis for Fated Mates Live. Tickets are at fatedmates.net/live. Or if you're anywhere else, sort of east of St. Louis, I might be near you on tour for these summer storms. Join me at sarahmaclean.net/tour. I will sign your books. I will have Fated Mates stickers. It will be a fun time. And if you can't join me, I do have a book coming out in July on the 8th. And I hope you'll download it, read it, love it, etc.
Pre-order now, wherever books are sold.
Pre-order now wherever books are sold. And there's a special romance cover that comes with the original cover from the Rip Bodice. Links in show notes.
Yeah, listen, everybody, sorry I hate present tense, but you all love it and don't care, so you can ignore me. Just fast forward over that.
Just yell. It's fine. Just yell into the void at Jen.
That's all I'm doing.
All right. That's what all the authors are doing.
They don't care, and you shouldn't.
All right. Goodbye, friends. We love you.